The first time it happened, I thought I was losing my mind. It was a Tuesday evening, and the autumn wind howled outside my apartment, rattling the windows in their frames. I was brushing my teeth in front of the bathroom mirror, my mind preoccupied with the mundane stresses of life. And then I saw it. My reflection blinked. I hadn't blinked. I froze, toothbrush suspended midair. My eyes darted to my own, reflected in the mirror, searching for any sign that I had misinterpreted the moment. Perhaps I'd been so lost in thought that I hadn't noticed my own movement. But no, I was certain. I hadn't blinked. The figure in the mirror stared back at me, its gaze unblinking and cold. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "Get it together, Sophie," I muttered, breaking eye contact and rinsing my toothbrush. By the time I looked back, everything seemed normal again. The next few days passed uneventfully. I told myself the incident had been a trick of the light, my tired mind playing games. Life went on as usual. Work, errands, the occasional attempt to write in my journal. But the feeling that something was off lingered, a faint, gnawing discomfort at the edge of my thoughts. It wasn't until Friday night that it happened again. I was in my bedroom, trying on outfits for an upcoming party. The mirror on my wardrobe door showed me fussing with my hair, twisting it this way and that as I debated whether to wear it up or down. I turned to grab a hairpin from the dresser, and in my peripheral vision, I saw my reflection remain still. I whipped around to face the mirror. My reflection was staring at me, its face pale and expressionless. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. "What the hell?" I whispered. The reflection tilted its head, ever so slightly, before resuming its mimicry of my movements. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that face. My face, staring back at me, devoid of life. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was sleep deprivation or some strange optical illusion. But deep down, I knew it was neither. Something was wrong. The next morning, I avoided the mirror entirely. I brushed my teeth in the kitchen sink, dressed in front of the window, and avoided any reflective surfaces as I prepared for the day. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, though. Even in broad daylight, with the sun streaming through my windows, I felt a weight pressing down on me. That evening, I decided to confide in my best friend, Mia. "You're acting weird, Sophie," Mia said, frowning over her coffee cup. We were sitting in a cozy cafe downtown, the chatter of other patrons filling the space around us. "I'm not crazy," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know what I saw." Mia tilted her head, concern flickering in her eyes. "Okay, tell me again what happened." I hesitated. Saying it out loud felt ridiculous, but I pressed on. "My reflection moved when I didn't," I said. "Twice now. Once in the bathroom and once in my bedroom." Mia leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. "Have you been sleeping enough? Eating properly? Sometimes stress can mess with your head, make you see things." "I'm not imagining it," I insisted. "It's real. I can feel it. There's something wrong with my mirror." Mia sighed. "Okay, let's say you're right. What do you think it means?" I hadn't thought that far. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I feel like it's watching me, like it's waiting for something." Mia's expression softened. "Sophie, I think you need to take a step back and breathe. Maybe take a break from the apartment for a few days? Stay with me if you want." I nodded, appreciating the offer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving wouldn't solve anything. That night, I sat in my living room, the television on but muted. My phone lay on the coffee table, Mia's number queued up in case I needed to call her. I glanced toward the hallway, where the bathroom mirror was visible through the open door. It seemed ordinary enough, just a rectangle of glass reflecting the dim light from the living room. But I couldn't look away. Something about its stillness was wrong, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for me to let my guard down. At 2:13 a.m., I woke to the sound of glass shattering. Heart racing, I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy candle holder, and crept toward the source of the noise. The bathroom door was ajar, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed from within. I pushed the door open slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The mirror was cracked, a jagged line splitting its surface like a lightning bolt. And in the center of the glass, where my reflection's face should have been, was an empty void. I backed away, nearly tripping over the bath mat. My mind raced with explanations, none of them comforting. Suddenly, the shards of glass began to move. They twisted and rearranged themselves, forming a new image in the fractured surface. It was my face, but distorted, my features stretched and warped, my eyes too large and filled with malice. "You shouldn't have looked," the reflection said, its voice low and echoing. I stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. My pulse pounded in my ears as I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady my breathing. But the voice wasn't finished. "You can't run from me, Sophie," it whispered, the sound seeping through the walls. "I'm already here." I spent the rest of the night huddled on the couch, every shadow in the room feeling like it was watching me. The apartment felt alive, its walls closing in around me. As dawn broke, I finally mustered the courage to leave. I packed a bag hastily and called Mia, begging her to let me stay with her for a while. But as I locked the door behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was following me. The warmth of Mia's apartment was a stark contrast to the oppressive cold that had seeped into my own. Her living room smelled faintly of lavender, the air filled with the comforting hum of her diffuser. "You're safe here," Mia said, handing me a steaming mug of tea. I nodded, but the weight in my chest refused to lift. Safe didn't feel like a word I could trust anymore. "You need to tell me everything," Mia pressed gently. "Start from the beginning." I recounted the events of the past week in painstaking detail. The unnatural movements, the fractured mirror, and the voice. Mia listened intently, her brow furrowing deeper with every word. "And you're sure this isn't just stress? Lack of sleep?" I met her eyes, my voice firm. "I know what I saw, and I know what I heard." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Okay, then we need to figure out what we're dealing with." The next morning, Mia set to work researching. She had a knack for diving headfirst into mysteries, her curiosity an unstoppable force. She started with the obvious, folklore about mirrors. "There are a lot of old superstitions about mirrors," Mia said, scrolling through articles on her laptop. "Some cultures believe they're portals to another world. Others say mirrors can trap spirits, or even souls." I shivered. "And what does that mean for me?" Mia clicked on another link. "It could mean that whatever you're seeing isn't really you. It might be something else, something pretending to be you." The idea sent a chill down my spine. "Pretending? For what?" Mia shrugged, her expression grim. "Maybe it wants to replace you." That night, I dreamed of the mirror. I stood in my bathroom, staring at the cracked glass. My reflection stared back at me, its features sharp and predatory. "Why do you run from me?" it asked, its voice a hiss. "I don't belong to you," I said, my voice trembling. The reflection smiled, its teeth too sharp. "Not yet." The shards of the mirror began to peel away, the edges curling like petals of a flower. Behind them was darkness, deep and endless. And from that darkness, something reached for me. I woke with a start, my body drenched in sweat. The room was dark, the faint glow of Mia's bedside lamp the only source of light. But something felt wrong. I sat up slowly, my eyes scanning the room. At first, I saw nothing unusual, but then I noticed the mirror on Mia's dresser. My reflection wasn't moving. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The reflection smiled. The next morning, I told Mia about the dream and the mirror. Her face paled. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming when you saw it?" "I'm sure," I said. "It's following me, Mia. It's not just in my apartment anymore." Mia hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, we need to get rid of it. All of it." We started by covering every mirror in the apartment. Towels, blankets, sheets, anything we could find. The house felt safer, less suffocating, once the reflective surfaces were hidden. But it didn't last. That afternoon, Mia's phone screen lit up, reflecting her face. For a moment, the reflection lingered longer than it should have. Its smile faint but unmistakable. "It's spreading," I said, panic tightening my chest. Mia stared at the phone, her hands trembling. "What do we do?" Desperate for answers, We reached out to an expert. Mia had a friend, Olivia, who dabbled in the occult. She wasn't exactly a professional, but at this point, I was willing to try anything. Olivia arrived that evening, her arms full of books and candles. Her demeanor was calm but focused, her dark eyes scanning the room with practiced precision. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice steady. I repeated my story once more, my voice trembling. Olivia listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she nodded. "It sounds like you've caught the attention of something otherworldly. What does that mean?" Mia asked, her voice sharp. Olivia sighed. "Mirrors are gateways. Most of the time, they're benign, just reflections. But sometimes they can attract things from beyond. Spirits, entities, echoes of other worlds. And this thing," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What does it want?" Olivia's gaze was somber. "It wants to cross over, and it's using you to do it." We prepared for a ritual that night. Olivia explained that the goal was to sever the connection between me and the entity, closing the gateway it had been using to reach me. Candles were placed in a circle around the largest mirror in Mia's apartment. Olivia sprinkled salt and herbs across the glass, muttering incantations under her breath. "You'll need to confront it," Olivia said, looking directly at me. "It's tied to you, so only you can banish it." My stomach churned. What if I can't? Olivia didn't answer. The room was eerily quiet as the ritual began. The candles flickered, their flames casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. Olivia chanted softly, her voice rhythmic and melodic. The air grew colder, the faint smell of sulfur creeping into the room. And then the mirror began to ripple. My reflection appeared, its face twisted into a cruel grin. "You can't stop me, Sophie," it said, its voice low and mocking. "I'm already so close." My chest tightened, fear threatening to consume me. But I forced myself to stand my ground. "You don't belong here," I said, my voice trembling. The reflection laughed, its form distorting and stretching. "And yet here I am. Do you really think you can send me back?" The room shook violently, the candles sputtering as the air filled with a deafening hum. The reflection pressed its hands against the glass, the surface bending outward as though it were about to break through. "Don't let it out," Olivia shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. I stepped forward, my hand trembling as I reached for the mirror. "You don't control me," I said, my voice steadying. "You never will." The reflection screamed, its face twisting into something monstrous. The glass cracked, the fractures spreading outward like spiderwebs. Olivia's chanting grew louder, the room filling with blinding light. And then, with a final, ear-piercing shriek, the mirror shattered. When the light faded, the room was still. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight finally gone. I looked down at the shards of glass on the floor. My reflection was nowhere to be seen. "It's over," Olivia said, her voice soft but firm. But as I met Mia's gaze, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't. The days following the ritual were a fragile kind of calm. The oppressive energy was gone, and my reflection had returned to behaving like a proper mirror image. Mia and Olivia assured me that the entity had been banished, but I couldn't bring myself to fully believe it. Something felt wrong. It started with little things. A faint smudge appeared on the corner of Mia's bathroom mirror, no matter how many times we cleaned it. Shadows seemed to ripple in reflective surfaces, especially in moments when I wasn't paying attention. And then there were the dreams. In them, I wandered through endless hallways lined with mirrors. Each one reflected a version of me, but none of them were quite right. Some smiled too broadly, their eyes empty. Others glared, hatred burning in their gaze. And always there was the voice. "Let me out." One night, I woke to find myself standing in front of Mia's covered dresser mirror. My fingers were gripping the edges of the sheet that concealed it, the fabric pulled halfway down. I gasped, stumbling backward. "What the hell?" I whispered, my heart pounding. I didn't remember getting out of bed. The next morning, I told Mia what had happened. Her face darkened, concern clouding her eyes. "You didn't see anything, did you?" "No," I said, shaking my head. But I was standing there, Mia. It's like I was sleepwalking, but I wasn't in control. Mia frowned. This doesn't make sense. Olivia said the ritual worked. Maybe it didn't, I said. Or maybe it's stronger than we thought. That evening, we called Olivia again. She arrived with a heavy bag slung over her shoulder, her expression tense. This isn't normal, she admitted, setting up candles and other tools on the living room table. If the entity was truly banished, you shouldn't be experiencing any lingering effects. Then why is it still happening? I asked. Olivia hesitated. It's possible the ritual didn't sever the connection completely. Or she trailed off, her eyes meeting mine. Or what? Or the entity found another way to tether itself to you. Olivia suggested a more direct approach. Instead of attempting to banish the entity again, we would try to understand its origin. Sometimes these things are drawn to people for a reason, Olivia explained. If we can figure out why it's targeting you, we might be able to stop it for good. The thought of confronting it again made my skin crawl, but I nodded. What do we need to do? Olivia lit a bundle of sage, its sharp, earthy scent filling the room. We're going to call it out, but this time we'll make sure it doesn't get the upper hand. The ritual began with a circle of salt, candles placed at the cardinal points. I sat in the center, clutching a small mirror Olivia had given me. You're going to speak to it, Olivia said. Ask it what it wants. But remember, don't let it intimidate you. You have the power here. I nodded, though my hands were shaking. As Olivia began chanting, the air grew heavy, the temperature dropping sharply. The flame of each candle flickered, bending toward me as though drawn by an invisible force. The surface of the mirror in my hands began to ripple like water. And then it appeared. My reflection stared back at me, but its eyes were wrong, cold and dark like bottomless pits. What do you want? I asked, my voice trembling. The reflection smiled, its expression chilling. Freedom, you don't belong here, I said, my voice firmer. Go back to where you came from. The reflection tilted its head, its smile widening. I've been here longer than you think, Sophie. You're the one who doesn't belong. What does that mean? I demanded. It laughed, a low, guttural sound that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. You invited me in, don't you remember? The room trembled, the candle's flames stretching unnaturally high. Olivia's chanting grew louder, but the reflection's voice drowned her out. I've been waiting for this moment, it said, pressing its hands against the glass. The surface bent outward, the barrier between us growing thinner. You can't cross over, I said, clutching the mirror tightly. I won't let you. The reflection's grin twisted into a snarl. You don't have a choice. The glass in my hands began to crack, the fractures spreading like veins. Shadows seeped from the edges, curling around my fingers. Keep your focus, Olivia shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. I closed my eyes, steadying my breathing. You're not real, I whispered. You're just a shadow. You don't control me. The shadows recoiled slightly, their grip loosening. The reflection screamed, its face contorting with rage. You can't get rid of me. I'm a part of you. No, you're not, I said, my voice rising. You're nothing. The mirror shattered in my hands, the pieces falling to the floor. The shadows dissipated, their screams fading into silence. The room was still. The candles burned steadily, their flames calm and even. Olivia knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder. It's over, she said softly, but I wasn't so sure. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange sense of unease. The apartment was quiet, Mia fast asleep in the next room. I reached for my phone to check the time, the screen lighting up in the darkness. And there, in the faint reflection on the screen, was my face, smiling when I wasn't. The reflection in my phone didn't blink. It didn't fade. It stared at me, its grin wide and unnatural, as though mocking the illusion of safety I had clung to. I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. The screen went dark as it hit the floor, but I could still feel its gaze burning into me. This wasn't over. The next morning, I woke to find a message scrawled on the bathroom mirror in what looked like condensation, though the room was bone dry. You can't hide from me. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The mirror was bare. No cracks, no distortions. But its smooth surface felt like a thread, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I called Olivia immediately. Olivia arrived within the hour, her expression grim as I recounted what had happened. "This is worse than I thought," she admitted, pacing the room. "The entity isn't just tied to mirrors anymore. It's tethered to you directly." "What does that mean?" Mia asked, her voice tight with worry. "It means it's no longer confined to reflective surfaces," Olivia said. "It can manifest anywhere, as long as Sophie remains its anchor." I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. "So how do we stop it?" Olivia hesitated. "There's one way, but it's dangerous." Olivia explained the plan. "We would perform a ritual to sever my connection to the entity completely, forcing it back into its realm. But there's a risk," she said. "If the entity is too strong, it could try to pull you in with it." I swallowed hard. "What happens if it does?" Olivia's gaze was steady. "Then you won't come back." The ritual required a mirror, a large one, unbroken and uncovered. Olivia set it up in the center of the living room, surrounding it with a protective circle of salt and candles. Mia hovered nearby, her face pale but determined. "We got your back," she said. I nodded, though my stomach churned with fear. "Once we start," Olivia said, "you'll need to confront the entity head-on. Find the connection it's using to tether itself to you, and destroy it." "How do I find it?" I asked. "You'll know," Olivia said. "But whatever happens, don't lose focus. If you let it overpower you, it'll win." As the ritual began, the room grew cold, the air thick with an unnatural energy. The mirror's surface shimmered, the faint outline of my reflection appearing in its depths. It wasn't me. The reflection grinned, its eyes dark and hollow. "Back so soon?" it taunted. I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "You're not me. You never were." The reflection laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. "But I could be. I'm everything you hide, everything you fear. I'm the real you." The mirror's surface rippled like water, and before I could react, the reflection reached out, its hand breaching the glass. I stumbled back as its fingers curled around my wrist, cold and unyielding. "Let me in," it hissed. "No!" I shouted, struggling against its grip. The room around me faded, the light of the candles dimming until all that remained was the mirror and the figure pulling me toward it. I felt myself being dragged into the glass, the world around me dissolving into shadows. "Focus, Sophie!" Olivia's voice echoed faintly, as though coming from far away. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. The entity wasn't real. It was a shadow, a parasite. It didn't control me. I controlled myself. "You're nothing," I said, my voice firm. "You don't own me?" The reflection faltered, its grip loosening. I opened my eyes to find myself back in the living room, the entity's form flickering in the glass. It screamed, its face twisting with rage. The mirror began to crack, fractures spreading outward like veins. "No!" the entity shrieked. "You can't escape me. I'm a part of you." "Not anymore," I said. With a final scream, the entity dissolved into shadows, its form shattering along with the mirror. The pieces fell to the floor, their edges glinting in the candlelight. The room was silent. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight finally gone. Mia rushed to my side, her arms wrapping around me. "It's over," she said, her voice shaking. Olivia knelt beside the shattered mirror, her expression somber. "You did it," she said. "The connection is broken." I nodded, though exhaustion weighed heavy on me. "Is it really gone?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "It's gone?" That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. But as dawn broke, I couldn't shake the faintest sense of unease. In the corner of my room, hidden beneath a cloth, was a small shard of the mirror I hadn't noticed before. And in its faint reflection, something moved.